What if I told you that women don't fall for looks, money, or even charm? They fall for something far more powerful, something most men never master. Because while every man knows how to compliment a woman, only a few know how to make her feel something real. And that's what separates a boy from a man and a man from a legend. This is not about sweet talk or pickup lines. This is about understanding the psychology of feminine energy. What truly awakens her mind, touches her heart, and earns her respect without begging for attention. Most men talk to impress, but women listen for truth. They're not moved by rehearsed lines. They're moved by presence, by depth, by words that carry emotional weight. And when those words come from an older, self-aware man who knows himself, she feels it instantly. It's not his age that captivates her, it's his energy, his tone, his stillness. So listen closely, because what I'm about to reveal are not just compliments. They're emotional triggers of attraction. They reach parts of her no one else has ever touched. These are the words that make her pause, that make her wonder who you really are, that make her replay your voice in her mind long after the conversation ends. By the end of this video, you'll understand why some men can say one sentence and a woman remembers it forever, while others speak for hours and leave no mark at all. You'll know exactly how to speak to a woman's soul, not her ego. Stay until the end, because once you understand this, you'll never look at attraction, confidence, or connection the same way again. Let's talk about the first and most misunderstood truth: depth over flattery. You see, most men think compliments are about boosting a woman's ego. They throw words like beautiful, gorgeous, stunning, as if repetition will create connection. But here's the irony: the more surface level the compliment, the faster it fades. A woman may smile, she may thank you, but inside nothing changes. Because beauty is not what keeps her. Depth does. And depth isn't about saying more, it's about seeing more. When an older man speaks, he doesn't compliment her to get a reaction. He speaks because he's observed her. He's noticed the way her tone softens when she's vulnerable, the way her eyes drift when she's thinking, the way she holds back words because she's choosing grace over anger. When he finally says, "I love how you handle yourself," it hits differently, because it's not flattery, it's reflection. It's truth filtered through experience. Women are wired to feel the air's intention behind words. They can sense immediately if your compliment is an attempt to impress or an expression of presence. That's why an older man's compliment carries power. It's grounded. It comes from a man who's no longer chasing validation, but offering awareness. He's not saying "you're beautiful" to get attention. He's saying, "There's something about your energy that's rare." And that distinction changes everything. In a world where everyone's trying to be noticed, a woman wants to be understood. She doesn't want to be the most attractive. She wants to be seen in her uniqueness. That's why empty flattery doesn't work. It doesn't require thought. But depth requires perception. It means you've actually been paying attention. You've studied her silence, not just her smile. You've recognized her kindness, not just her curves. That's what makes your words feel sacred. And here's where most men fail. They try to impress before they connect. They rush to prove they're different, instead of showing they have noticed differently. You don't impress a woman by calling her beautiful. You impress her by noticing the way she lights up when she talks about something she loves. You tell her, the way you speak about your dreams, it's contagious. Suddenly, she feels safe. She feels seen. That's when emotional attraction begins. You see, flattery feeds insecurity, but depth feeds identity. When you compliment a woman with substance, you're not giving her something she craves. You're confirming something she already knows about herself, but rarely hears from others. That's what creates emotional intimacy. It's not romantic manipulation. It's truth spoken with awareness. Women remember how a man made them feel about themselves in his presence. And an older man, one who's lived through mistakes, heartbreaks, and lessons, understands that words are sacred currency. He uses them carefully. He doesn't compliment just to fill silence. He uses silence to make his compliments mean something. When he says, "You make people feel comfortable," she doesn't just hear it, she feels valued. Because no one else noticed that about her. Depth is not about being poetic, it's about being present. It's not about saying the right thing, it's about feeling what's true. That's what separates a man from a boy. A boy compliments beauty he barely understands. A man honors depth he's taken time to recognize. And that's the secret. Women fall for the man who sees them beyond the obvious, who can describe them in ways no one else ever has. Because when you see a woman's essence, you touch her spirit, and that's the part of her that never forgets. So when you speak next time, pause. Don't reach for the easy words. Let your observation lead. Let your awareness shape your language. Compliment the parts of her she thought no one noticed. Because in that moment, you become unforgettable. A real compliment isn't about saying something nice. It's about giving someone a piece of truth they didn't know they needed. When you do that, your words don't just enter her mind, they live in her memory. And that's what women truly crave, not words that flatter the surface, but words that recognize the soul. So stop chasing beauty. Start recognizing depth. Because the woman who feels seen will never forget the man who saw her first. Let's move deeper into something most people never understand. Women don't actually want validation, they want recognition. Validation says, "I see what you're showing." Recognition says, "I see what's real." And that's a massive difference. Validation feeds the ego, recognition nourishes the soul. When a man learns this difference, everything about the way he connects changes. Think about it. A woman can get validation anywhere, from social media, from attention, from compliments that mean nothing. But recognition, that's rare. Recognition is when you notice the substance behind her surface. It's when you say something that reveals you are actually present, that you didn't just see her, you understood her. When you tell a woman, "I respect how you think," you're not validating her looks, you're honoring her intellect. When you say, "You have a calming presence," you're not feeding her vanity. You're recognizing the emotional peace she brings into your space. That's what makes older men stand out. They've lived long enough to realize that true connection comes from attention, not admiration. Validation makes her feel wanted. Recognition makes her feel known, and that's what she craves. Because deep down, every woman is tired of being looked at. She wants to be understood. When she meets a man who listens to understand rather than respond, who observes without trying to control, she relaxes. Her walls drop. She starts to feel safe enough to be authentic. That's when attraction transforms into intimacy. You see, validation is shallow because it comes from need. Men who haven't mastered themselves compliment women to get approval in return. But when you've matured, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, you don't need to validate her to feel confident. You recognize her because you value truth. That's the masculine energy that calms her chaos. It's not about being perfect. It's about being present enough to see what others overlook. Recognition is built through attention. It's when you notice the small things, the way she pauses before answering because she's thinking deeply, the way she changes her tone when she's protecting her emotions, the way she shifts her energy when she's uncomfortable. When you can name those things gently, she feels seen. You're not praising her. You're showing her that her emotional world matters to you. Most men compliment to fill silence. But the older man, he studies, he waits, he notices patterns. Then when he finally speaks, his words have gravity. A woman will remember a man who said one genuine thing more than 100 who said everything meaningless. Because recognition doesn't echo in her ears, it stays in her heart. Recognition also means restraint. It means you don't rush to fix her emotions or control her reaction. You simply hold space. That's something younger men rarely understand. That a woman doesn't want you to solve her. She wants you to see her without judgment. When you do that, she feels emotionally protected, and that's when she starts admiring you. Not because you're older, but because you're emotionally safe. And this is where emotional intelligence separates men. A woman can tell instantly when your compliment comes from a place of awareness versus insecurity. Awareness makes her trust you. Insecurity makes her question your motive. When you recognize her strength, she feels empowered. When you validate her to get approval, she feels drained. Recognition is spiritual in nature. It's not about what you say, it's about what your presence communicates. When you look at her with genuine curiosity, not to analyze her, but to understand her, she feels it. Because energy doesn't lie. You can't fake presence. You can't pretend awareness. Either you're emotionally grounded or you're not. And when you are, your compliments become rare treasures. She'll play them back in her mind long after you're gone. Not because you said something poetic, but because it came from truth. Recognition creates memory. Validation creates noise. So the next time you're with a woman, don't look for something beautiful to say. Look for something true to acknowledge. Look for what makes her different, not what makes her desirable. Speak to the parts of her that no one else takes time to see. Because that's where love begins. Not in fantasy, but in awareness. You want to make a woman fall for you. Stop trying to impress her. Start recognizing her. Because a woman who feels recognized will never forget the man who saw her. Not as an image, but as a whole being. So don't validate her to please her. Recognize her to free her. Because when she feels understood, that's when she finally chooses to trust you. Not with her time, but with her truth. That presence speaks louder than words. And this is where most men lose the game before they even begin. They think attraction comes from what they say, what they wear, or how confident they appear. But women don't fall for appearance. They fall for energy. They fall for how a man's presence makes them feel. You can say all the right things, but if your energy feels restless, desperate, or performative, she feels it immediately. You can't fake calm. You can't fake groundedness. Presence is not about speaking more. It's about feeling more. An older man carries presence because he's lived long enough to be comfortable in silence. He doesn't need to fill every pause with words. He's learned that silence, when paired with certainty, creates intrigue. When he speaks, he doesn't rush. He lets his words breathe. He looks into her eyes not to impress her, but to understand her, and that alone changes everything. Because women are drawn not to the loudest man in the room, but to the one who feels the most centered. You see, presence is emotional safety. It's when a man's energy says, "You can relax here." Women don't trust words until they've felt that energy. That's why you can tell her she's beautiful 100 times, and it still won't matter if your presence feels uncertain. But if you simply look at her with stillness, with patience, with quiet confidence, she'll remember that feeling long after the conversation ends. Most men underestimate how sensitive women are to subtle shifts. She feels when your tone changes. She feels when you're pretending to listen, but your mind is elsewhere. She feels when you're trying to prove your worth instead of owning it. That's why presence is power. It's silent communication that says, "I don't need to convince you of who I am. I know who I am." And the moment she senses that, attraction deepens. When a man is present, his energy slows down the pace of everything around him. He creates a space where she doesn't have to perform. She doesn't have to be perfect or charming or strong. She just gets to be, and that's the most magnetic thing you can offer. Peace in a world that constantly asks her to perform. That's what women fall for. That's what makes them emotionally open. Presence is not about dominance, it's about awareness. It's the ability to read the room, to feel the energy, to respond with patience instead of reaction. It's when you notice her subtle discomfort and adjust without her saying a word. It's when you stay still when most men would rush to fill the space. That stillness makes her feel like she's in the presence of a man who's not driven by fear or ego, but by grounded self-control. Older men naturally embody this when they've faced failure, loss, and disappointment. Those experiences teach patience. They teach silence. They teach that not every moment needs to be controlled. That's why women are drawn to mature energy. It's not about age. It's about emotional regulation. When you can hold yourself steady in chaos, she feels safe in your energy. That's what presence does. It doesn't demand attention, it commands respect. And here's the paradox: when you're present, you actually say less, but she hears more. Your words carry weight because they're rooted in calm conviction. You're not trying to fill the space. You are the space. And that difference changes how she responds to you. She listens more closely. She opens up more deeply. Because presence builds trust faster than charm ever could. This is why emotional intelligence matters. Because when you're grounded, you stop performing. You stop trying to be impressive and start being intentional. You start noticing her emotions in real time, her micro expressions, her pauses, her hesitations. You don't interrupt them, you hold space for them. And that's when connection turns into chemistry. A woman doesn't remember the man who spoke the most. She remembers the one who felt the most real. The one whose stillness silenced her overthinking. The one whose tone slowed her heartbeat. The one whose presence felt like home. Because in that moment, she's not being validated or admired, she's being understood. That's the power of presence. It's not something you perform. It's something you become. It's the energy of a man who's done the inner work, who's healed his impatience, who's not controlled by his need to impress. It's the confidence of someone who no longer seeks attention because he is attention. So if you want to master attraction, stop chasing reactions, learn to own your energy, speak less, feel more, listen fully, because your presence, calm, focused, and real, will always say more than your words ever could. And remember this: presence isn't about being seen, it's about being felt. And the man who can be felt without trying will always be remembered without speaking.